Welcome, everyone, to the Sex Reimagined Podcast. I'm Dr. Willow Brown, here with the one and only Leah Piper. We're so thrilled that you're here. And today we're talking about something so important and so common in so many long-term relationships, which is the mismatched libido. Everything starts out hot and heavy in the beginning, but a few years in, it's like, you want it in the morning, I want it in the night, and you just can't find your way back to each other.
Or you want it all the time and I don't want it at all. Much easier to negotiate sex in the morning and the evening than I don't want any.
Yeah, that's right.
So tune in, turn on, and fall in love with curing the mismatched libido.
Welcome to the Sex Reimagined Podcast, where sex is shame-free and pleasure-forward. Let's get into the show.
Okay, well, this is a hot topic. When you first fall in love and you're dating somebody and everything's so brand new and you're drinking that in-love cocktail of oxytocin and testosterone and opioids and dopamine, everything that's flooding your body makes sex so easy. You can't wait to tear each other's clothes off. You're getting to know one another. Your best self is emerging, and so is theirs. And the mutual lusciousness of wanting to bond is so real, and it feels so fucking special. Like, this is it. I have found my person, and it's always going to be like this.
Mm-hmm. I know. Those are the good times.
Those are the best
honeymoon
parts.
phase. Yeah. I mean, that's what brings us together with another,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because there's so many other layers of personality and persona that also can correlate to the mismatched and the mismatched libido down the line. Once we get, sort of completed with that honeymoon phase, how do we keep that alive? How do we continue to turn toward each other when we start to find that we want different things, especially in the bedroom? I think there's also a level of comfort that happens with couples where it's like, now you've seen the worst of me as well as the best of me. I was always putting my best foot forward in the beginning, and now you've seen all of me and you still find me sexy. Yes, there's still an attraction. I know that there's a novelty for somebody new, somebody that you don't know, has a certain look or a certain style that is attractive to you. But once you do start to get to know people, things shift and change, and you see their true colors.
Yeah, I was just going to say, with the research of Esther Perel, one of the things that she's noted that I think makes a lot of sense is that when you're with someone for a long time, you lose the mystery. Mm-hmm. And a part of Eros is connected to some mystery and having things out of the ordinary. And nothing kind of kills libido more for many people, not all people, but safety, security, routine, and children. Like cortisol can rob you of your libido. The stress of everyday life where you're not even, for some people, it's not even just like get up, rinse and repeat. It's like get up and get through the day. And when you're under a certain amount of stress, sex is the last thing on your mind. It actually feels like a burden and not a blessing. There are some people's systems, though, that like the need and the fulfillment and the connection of sexuality is what helps them de-stress. Where for other people, the idea of sex is like one more thing to do, one more thing to accomplish, one more thing you owe someone. And so it feels burdensome. And I think a lot of mismatched libidos can sometimes stem from those differences.
Absolutely. I think, when you do find yourself in those times in your relationship when you're not quite, meeting each other sexually, that's the opportunity to get more creative. That's the opportunity to prioritize intimacy, because almost all couples find that when they do prioritize and they do create a little intimacy bubble with each other, and they throw out the things that are keeping them in a stressed state or keeping them from creating intimacy with one another, then they start to feel so much better, so much more connected with each other, so much better in their bodies, so much better in their lives. It starts to open up new possibilities. And, you and I have both worked with clients who were kind of at the end of their relationship. It was like, okay, we either got to figure out this intimacy thing or it's over. And then they do figure out the intimacy thing through, techniques and practices and putting it on the calendar, because that's what has to happen sometimes. And they report back, God, I feel like I'm in a whole different relationship. So there is hope for everyone who is like, gosh, we're just, this person wants it all the time. That person doesn't want it at all, or they want it at different times, or they want different styles of sexuality.
Yeah, I mean, to your point about like making time for it, I mean, how many hands are going up in the air who is listening right now and saying, yeah, I may be sort of like dreading and not in the mood leading up to actually showing up for some kind of sexual connection. But then afterward, we're both looking at each other going, God, I'm so glad we did that. Like, we got to do that more often. Me and Matt say that almost every time we're sexual. Like, God, we should really do this more often. Like, this is so fun. This is so good for us. And I know that is happening in bedrooms everywhere. It's like just showing up and then having the experience, and afterwards you're like, this is not a hardship. This is a joy. This is fun. This is a great way to play. I love you so much. You feel soft towards each other in terms of your just the gentleness. Something happens, right? It's like you have intimacy and you feel more connected, and that puts you in a better mood. I mean, it literally does change your brain chemistry and helps you with your mood. So you would think it would be more compelling for people to show up for it, even if they don't feel like it. And that's one of the things I think Tantra is really good at, is it gives people little short practices so that it's not that you're saying yes to sex. It's not that you're necessarily saying yes to penetration. You're saying yes to connection with a practice that takes 5 or 10 minutes. And the beauty of it is it changes the way you feel. And it opens you to want to take that next sexual connection further, which often leads to orgasms and sex. It's pretty awesome. You just got to show up for it.
I think that's a really good point. Like, it doesn't have to be a huge hour-long or 2-hour-long intimacy date on your calendar. It could just be like a little, hey, we've got 15 minutes. Let's go spend 5 of those minutes, like just being in breath together, in eye gazing together. Now that can be hard to do if there's also discord between the two of you on top of, the stresses of life. So if you're just actually not in a place of, I actually don't like you in the moment, if you're in that place, it's like even harder to get yourself into that little nest and that little bubble. But one of the practices that we do use quite a lot for couples who are kind of going through challenges is something called the bubble practice, where we basically cast an energetic bubble around yourselves as the couple. And even if you only have 5 minutes, you can do this one little practice, cast this bubble around yourself and pull out with your left hand all the things that you don't want in the bubble. I don't want my stress. I don't want my fatigue. I don't want my, the
Bad
pulling
mood,
of
shame,
the kids.
right?
I don't,
Judgmental mind.
all the pieces that you want to take out. I don't want this discord between us in the bubble. So you just take it all out, and then you put in what you want to put in with your other hand. It doesn't matter which hand you use, but with your other hand, putting in, I want to bring in connection. I want to bring in intimacy. I want to bring in love. I want to bring in a sense of gratitude. I want to bring in a sense of,
Innocence,
coming
laughter.
to understanding with each other. Yeah, playfulness. So that little practice in and of itself is a really great way for couples to begin, coming back into.
It's a great practice for you having a high stakes conversation about sex. It's a great bubble to do when you're just feeling tender and you need to be in loving arms. It's a great thing to do before any kind of intimacy practice, whether that turns into making love or maybe it's a Tantra session where one person's going to receive and the other person's going to practice giving. I think when it comes to mismatched libidos, there's a couple things that are happening. Sometimes it's physiological. Someone just has more testosterone in their system. Someone else's libido is a little bit offline. I think a lot of that time has to do with external stress. Other times it's different seasons in someone's life. You've got raising little kids. When all your energy is going to those infants and those toddlers, it's really hard for various people to feel sexual because all their sexual energy is creative energy, and that's going to keeping that kid alive. And so they're so swamped that they just don't have anything left over. So that can be a chapter where sex is mismatched. Then you've got andropause and menopause. And oftentimes we've got mismatched libidos at that stage in life. Or you've got, a caretaking issue. Someone in your world needs more caretaking. And if you're the primary caretaker, that can zap your sexual energy. Or you are, getting a new career started or a new job across the country. And then you've got, again, cortisol levels that are taking out of your body. These are all things I think when this is arising, the partner that has the higher libido can take it very personally, their partner's lower libido. They can feel unattractive, undesirable. What's wrong with them? Are they broken? Or what's wrong with me? Am I not desirable anymore? And so it can then create a big emotional strain, a lot of insecurities. Those make it an even harder uphill battle to sort of soothe and create distance around. So a couple of solutions, first and foremost, is what's happening with your life? Who's under the most duress? How do both people approach sex? Is sex a stress reliever and a way to deeply connect that you're hungry for? Or is stress feels like a burden and an obligation? Finding out how we feel about sex, I think this is an important thing to address, how we can overcome that and then move towards each other. I think the other thing is hormonally, getting your hormonal levels tested and seeing if there's anything that you can correct from a physiological standpoint. Sometimes it's like getting better sleep and getting better exercise can get your libido back in check. Maybe shifting some things in your diet. So you have sort of that physiological thing to look at. And then lastly, I think the thing for us to deep dive into is the difference between spontaneous desire and responsive desire. And how to play with those, because that can actually turn into a pretty cool adventure if you're willing to shift your perspective and romance the beloved again.
Leah was just visiting me in Santa Barbara because we just did an amazing women's retreat here. It was really powerful. And so we were chatting about spontaneous desire and, responsive desire the other day while we were driving around. And I was like, I think I have spontaneous desire. And she was like, I think you probably have responsive desire, but it's responsive to nature and swimming in the pool, like things that you wouldn't think are like, things that cause desire. But because I'm cultivating my sexual energy on a consistent and regular basis and always drawing high levels of arousal to the place in my body where I feel that most stored and built up, simply swimming in water can be a turn on for me, but I am responding to an external stimulation. I think there is some crossover too. This is kind of where our conversation was going, was like, because I do keep myself highly cultivated sexually and with arousal, then it's easy for me to respond to external stimuluses, whether they're coming from another human being or, nature.
Yeah, so I don't know that everyone would know what highly cultivated means when you say that. So if we could define that, but before we do, let's first talk about what is spontaneous desire and what is responsive desire. Willow mentioned that there's like an external inspiration for those of us that have responsive desire. I have responsive desire. I don't feel horny. Like, I don't ever really feel horny. I need something outside of me to remind me to feel the horniness. So it's sort of like, it's kind of like sexuality is a river that runs through everybody and it's constantly coursing. With people with spontaneous desire, they're constantly connected to it. It's like they could go at any moment. It's just like, there's just a horny aliveness that's just like easily accessible. Responsive desire, it's like, I know the river's there, but I don't feel it until someone points out, oh yeah, that's right, the river's there. So for some people, that's flirting. You know, they'll feel their desire again because someone's flirting with them, and all suddenly, like, their eyes are dilating, and they're really paying attention, and they're more connected to their senses now, and ooh, they really like the way this person is kind of helping them open up, and they feel more connected. And so eye gazing and even phone sex or reading erotica or good music that they have a wonderful association to when it comes to sexuality. Like the music turns them on, that beat and that rhythm gets them into their body, and then they start to feel their sexual energy. And I think what's really interesting about that is you'll get into a relationship and you start that relationship where everyone's really hot and heavy. It's like you can't wait to tear each other's clothes off. And so everyone thinks, well, we had it then. Why don't we have it now? Like, I'm just as horny for you as I was in the beginning. Why does it feel like you're never in the mood now? Well, the things we do when we're courting someone connects us. Those people who have responsive desire is constantly flowing. It's like you're flirting and you're getting dressed up to go out and you're
getting texts,
teaching each other the music that you like, and you're going on adventures, and you're making out. I mean, once you're in a long-term relationship, what was the last time you French kissed? So there's lots of things that looked like spontaneous desire in the beginning, but actually there were a lot of responsive desire actions that brought that horniness out of your partner. So it's not that there's something broken in them or that they're shut down or even that their libido is low and yours is high. It's that there needs to be more external stimuli to bring out that person's turn on. And so that's the difference between responsive and spontaneous desire. Now, share with us a little bit, Willow, anything on top of that you are at the top of your mind, or what is cultivated? Well,
I think before we go there, talking about spontaneous desire, I feel like this is really, for the most part, this is what happens for penis owners because they've got that testosterone, right? It's a very physiological thing. Their brain and their penis are very connected, and it's like they see something, they're horny. Well, that would be external response. So that would be
I want to be careful that we don't over generalize that spontaneous desire is men and responsive desire is women, because I think that's not true.
I think it's not. It's
high
just
percentages. Probably spontaneous desire men, responsive probably women. But I think it's a
higher percentage. But I know women who have to self-cultivate or masturbate, 4 or 5 times a day, and they just have to go take care of themselves. Their partners are, not on board having that much sex every day. And so it can go both ways. But I would say because testosterone levels are higher in men, that is one of the reasons that we probably have higher percentages of men who are living in that spontaneous desire place. I mean, they're waking up with an erection, out of sleep. So
yeah, but many men don't feel horny just because they have an erection.
True that. Yeah. Although when they do have that erection, they do equate it to, I should do something with this. I think for the most part. I don't know.
It depends on the age. Yeah.
I think, that's true. For sure.
I think for a lot of penis owners, especially as they get older, their penis needs more convincing that you want them, that you desire them, in order for them to sustain the erection and to go as far as to do the act itself. And I would say, like, percentage wise, that I see in my private practice and even in my own life experience, men tend to be the one that wants it more and that is ready for it more and is hungry for it. It's not uncommon for penis owners to be described as, verbal affirmation and communication it's like how they feel connected is through the intimacy, is through touch. And what is the old saying? I don't want to get it messed up, but it's like, in order for men to feel connected, they use sex as the medium to get that connection. In order for women to feel connected, they need to feel connected before they can have sex.
They
So
need to feel
it's like,
emotionally connected to before
yeah,
they can have sex.
yeah.
Yeah,
Anywho,
and I think, for me, because when we were chatting about this the other day in the car, I was thinking, gosh, I think I have both. I think I
yeah,
have
that's what you said.
a balance of both. And you were challenging me, saying, oh, maybe you probably have more,
Well, I was just curious. I was asking you
responsive.
questions to go, I really wonder if that's true. That's really
Yeah,
interesting to be both. So tell me a little bit
yeah.
more. Like,
So
when you
yeah,
feel horny in the water,
because I
what's
do
happening
feel
in the
horny a
water?
lot. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I get turned on pretty easily, and of course, it's related to my cycle. It's related to my menstrual cycle, and also I'm not in a long-term relationship where I'm dealing with the same person sexually and intimately day in and day out. So there's those factors. I've definitely been in long-term relationships for, long periods of time where I was not as horny as I am now that I'm,
Yeah.
playing in different arenas.
Yeah. I was definitely
But
hornier when I was single than in a
yeah,
long-term relationship.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's kind of normal and natural. But I will say that, since I've been doing Taoist sexology practices the last 20 years, and every time I bring myself to a climax, I roll that climax up through my body and into my adrenal glands, which is where your sexual energy is stored, according to Chinese. And I bring it up into my brain and into the pineal gland and into the pituitary and into the hypothalamus. And I get to have these like sort of rolling and building orgasms that, I'll run at least 3, if not 6 or 9 of these through my whole system every time before I have the full over the waterfall, as we
Release.
say, orgasm. And sometimes I won't even have the full orgasm. So, that being said, there's still so much territory to explore for me, for somebody who's been doing this work for decades, but I do think, because I'm and I'm always tending to my adrenals, I'm always tending to my kidneys, because that's where sexual energy is stored in my viewpoint from the lens of Taoism. And so with the Qigong practices I do, with the breath work I do while I'm swimming in the pool, with the herbs and the peptides that I take, with everything I do, I'm kind of always tending to, because not only is your adrenals and your kidneys the cauldron that holds your jing qi, your sexual energy, but it's also the place that your vitality comes from, your creativity, your energy. So, always bringing that into the equation with everything I do, even with the food I eat, even with how I chew, like all of it is oriented to that. And that's just because I've been teaching this and studying it, and I used my own body as a field to experiment with all the time. And so, and then again, I am heading into perimenopause, but I'm doing it with a lot of consciousness. But I definitely feel a difference between the time when I'm approaching ovulation to the time when I'm, right post cycle. So there's hormones play a huge role in all of it. I will say that. And I think cultivating consistently and on a regular basis, when I say the word cultivating, I mean building up my sexual energy within the places in my body where I feel it is best stored for later use. And where were we? Oh, we were in Portugal after we did the women's retreat in Greece. And we were driving around the Algarve, which is so lovely. If you've never been to southern Portugal, it's just a region, the Algarve. It's gorgeous. And I had this one track playing over and over, and it was just like the sun was shining and the track was playing, the music was going, and it just was so easy for me to get turned on and aroused in that environment. So it was, yes, I was responding to the environment around me, and also I think, I cultivate having a high libido. I don't think I came in with a high libido. I definitely did not come in with a lot of energy and a lot of vitality. So it's why this path has sort of pulled me onto it so strongly, I believe, because I noticed a huge difference once I started doing the practices. I was like, oh my God, I can stay awake through my classes, my Chinese medicine classes where I used to fall asleep. And I just had so much more energy and vitality. And I was waking up earlier and going to bed earlier and just had more. I used to be a super night owl and I would sleep in super late. Like I had a really imbalanced circadian rhythm and just imbalanced hormones and imbalanced gut health and all the things. I was anorexic for years, so I really did a number on myself in my teens. And it took me a long time to find a path that I could not only use food and medicines and herbs and things like that, but also use energy to heal and to balance my system.
That's interesting. We're a little opposite. I think I came in with a very high libido and felt pretty horny from age 5 on. And then found myself in healing vortexes and then eventually in long-term relationships where things started to emotionally shut down. And it's made it a little harder to feel eros. And one of the things that I've started to take responsibility for in regards to the fact that I have a more of a responsive desire nervous system is to really think about and be intentional and use my brilliant mind and its imagination to find things that warm me up and turn me on. For so much of the early part of my training in Tantra, it was always be present, never fantasize. Never ever fantasize. You're doing it wrong if you're fantasizing. And at this stage of my life, I'm like, what a bunch of fucking bullshit. Do what works. If you got a hot erotic place in your imagination, plug in, turn on, and then get present. Dip into that hot erotic place in your mind and then come back and share it with your partner. There's ways to take that erotic imagination and bring it to the table so that it becomes a part of your playground. And so I'm really aware of tuning into my senses and allowing especially the feeling of my skin to bring me into a turned on place. Just having my vulva bare and feeling the air and spreading my legs and paying a real attention to the hot spots and the cool spots in the room and the fabric beneath me and the hair on my brow and the breath above my lip. All these things bring me into a sensual turned on state. But it's also external. One of the things that feels so frustrating when you have responsive desire is you start to feel like it's up to everyone outside of you to get you there. And that is such a crapshoot. It becomes a setup for your partner that has to guess and figure out how do you get turned on. And then it leaves you feeling a little impotent because you just don't feel turned on. So how can you ever get in the mood? You have to kind of go, what are the things externally that I can engage in, that I can be responsible for, that get things plumped up down there, whether you're a penis owner or a vulva owner. So for me, the discovery of erotica has been novel. I mean, God, you guys have heard me on the show for, seriously, the last 5 or 6 years. There's some erotica that drives me into the bedroom to masturbate. I am shitting you not, sometimes self-pleasuring 10 to 12 times in a day. I don't have it quite as often as I would like now, probably because I'm too well-versed now in all these books. I need some new inspiration. But I think that's one of the reasons why people are driven towards porn, is because it gives them a connection to the erotic that they can then carry inside of themselves. So we have to find healthy ways that bring us. Porn isn't is a little more. I don't want to use the word dangerous necessarily, but can be problematic. So
It
without
can be a
going deep into
slippery
that,
slope.
yeah,
So you just, I think porn can also be good medicine.
totally.
It's just like anything, you have to dose it right,
It can be great inspiration, but
Vibrators, you
also
got to
addictive.
dose them right,
Yeah,
or everything. You got
right.
to dose it right. It's all about the balance. And that's one
Yeah.
of the things I love so much about, the Taoist path is it's like we're looking for the place where it's just enough to make a shift and to make a change, but we're still involved, rather than overriding our systems and needing that external stimulus to be the thing that always gets us there.
But I think responsive desire, external stimulus is actually really important, but you can be the creator of the external stimulus.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
And you can
external
also be
stimulus is actually
involved.
mandatory for me. It's not something I can just leave off the table.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
has
no,
to be
exactly.
activated.
But it's done in a balanced way where it's like, okay, I need this much external stimulus to get turned on, to get revved up, and then I'm there. I'm using my internal response from that point. So you're meeting the external
Yeah.
stimulus.
So I think it's interesting that you use like nutrition and supplements and exercise and like all these sort of holistic physical things. And I actually need imagination and sensation and emotional context to bring me into my responsive openness.
Uh-huh.
I think too,
I'm
like,
sure I would get turned on if I read those erotica books. I'm always too busy reading health books.
right, you would
One
rather
of these
read about
days,
meditation, and
I
I would
will
rather
get to
read
these
about
erotica
BDSM.
books. Yeah, exactly.
I
Well,
think
I will
too.
say, driving across Italy, I was listening to A Sacred Kink, fantastic book, really, really good, Lee Harrington. And it had so many different like ideas and scenarios and different pathways to opening up eroticism, all in the name of connecting deeper to yourself, all in the name of knowing yourself deeper. And I mean, there were some things that he was talking about. I was like, oh my God, I would never do that, And then other things I was like, oh, I had never thought of that. That's intriguing, And then of things that I have tried and done
Well, what are they,
and
Willow?
have
Don't
enjoyed.
just give us examples.
Oh gosh, I can't think of anything right now off the top of my head, but like, things that I don't feel intrigued or interested in that I feel like a hell no to, or, like drawing blood and, deeper kind of, that kind of, more intense physical kink stuff. Also, I feel a little bit
Wait, I'm
nervous.
confused. What about the stuff that you would be less compelled? Are you saying having listened to
Like
it, you're more
drawing
compelled
blood.
now, or you're not? You're still not compelled. Like those would be the brakes versus the accelerators.
I would be a hell no to these things.
Okay, and that's relevant because.
You just asked me, what are some of the things?
Oh,
So I'm
okay.
going through them.
Okay, so I was getting confused as to what direction you were going in. I was thinking more solution oriented
Yeah,
things
I
that
don't know.
you
I
found.
started. It started with the things that I was a
Yeah.
no to.
Well, so wait. I want to pause you there because I think that's super interesting, especially for vulva owners, because we usually start with what we don't want. Mm-hmm. And so that would be the breaks. But some of the stuff that I'm actually reading is like we get stuck in always communicating the breaks and the shit we don't want, and then we have a hard time ever arriving to what turns us on and what helps us press the accelerator. So one theory is like we've already know pretty well the shit we don't want. Let's focus on the things that we do want. That's the harder question, and I think we go to what we don't want because that's the easier question. I just find that really
That's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah. For me in this moment, totally possible that I did that, but I also wanted to get the no things out of the way so I could get to the good shit.
Sure.
That's where my mind was. But that is interesting that a lot of vulva owners, they know what they don't want, but they
Right.
don't know what they do want. I mean, that makes perfect sense.
And so, like their partners are like, oh, I know the list of what she doesn't like. Trust me.
Right. Totally. Yeah.
But then like the list of like what we do like is so tiny. And I feel so much sadness about that. Both for, parts of my life that lived years with that. And for so many of the women, that come to our workshops and like it's not normalized for us to really speak out loud or even investigate that there's probably a whole beautiful erotic universe that we haven't even allowed ourselves to explore or look into because we don't know how. We don't know what to say. It's embarrassing or it's awkward or like there's some sort of conditioned response that goes, oh, then I would be a slut or then I would be a bad girl or then I would be like this person or I would be a pervert or I would go to hell. I mean, all the stuff that's so uninvestigated. So it's like I really want to exclamation point that it might be really different, our libido, if we spent more time figuring out our accelerators and not worry about the brakes so much. The brakes will happen naturally. You don't have to analyze that as much as, showing up for what turns you on. And it's okay because those things also change. Like the things that turned me on in my 30s, I find kind of boring now.
Well, and they change day to day throughout your cycle.
Right. And then you've got your cycle. And then you've got, like menopause.
Okay, so let me get to my accelerators then.
Oh, good. All right. Finally, knock it out.
Okay. All right. So some of the things that I was like, oh, that sounds intriguing. That could be hot was, I love rope play. So I want to get more into that. And learning the different ties and also being tied up. I love being tied up.
What do you like about it?
I love the sensation and I love the way it makes like my, like my nipples feel or my hips feel or so very sensational for me. And then also if my partner is kind of like, controlling me by the harness of the ropes or whatever that feels like, okay, like you're in control and I'm not. So that's fun. I think I'm a pretty good switch. I get turned on by being in a more dominant position and also in a more sub position. Another thing though was that I haven't even really thought much about, though I've seen it, is the suspension, where you're actually getting like tied up and then pulled up and you're totally immobile and you can't move at all. Some of it sounds really uncomfortable physically. And, I was thinking about you while I was driving across Italy. I'm like, oh, Leah would hate that.
I don't like being uncomfortable. I do like ropes,
being uncomfortable.
But for different reasons.
One of the scenarios was where the woman was like, she only had one foot on the ground, but the rest of her was like suspended. And so after a long period of time, that whole leg started shaking and the foot, got really painful. And, but the whole thing for her was just this cathartic place where she met this place inside of herself that, she felt like she couldn't stand on her own 2 feet or something. I can't remember.
So there's like metaphorical meaning that was really profound.
There's always this metaphorical meaning. And so, I just think as far as, the mind being such an important part of our sexuality, like we get so stuck in a way of sexuality that it's like, it's always this is what sex is in our relationship. So of course it's like, drudgery. I don't want to, it's like, I need something different, some kind of new stimulation or some kind of new creative experience. And really like the vastness of what's possible within sexuality it's as big as the universe. Like it's really wide and vast. I mean, I did something last night with a friend, who wasn't even in the room with me that I have never done before. And it was just so erotic. It was so erotic. And it was just totally creative, spontaneous in the moment. And yeah, you never know. You never know what's possible when you just stay with like the places where you're like, I don't know if I'm okay with that. That feels shameful. That feels wrong. That feels bad. Well, let me try. Let me just go that direction a little bit and see, okay, you stretch into it. You stretch into it in the moment, and then it starts to stretch you. And then, oh my God, you did something amazing that you were like, wow, never did that before.
I think shame is a really interesting arrow. It can be a golden arrow to where some eros and turn on reside. I think that's kind of scary thing to encounter for a lot of people at first. I'll say some of my accelerators are feeling someone's eyes undress me. Being undressed and not being touched yet, but having someone like with their eyes desire me, or then sort of maneuver my body, open up my body, be in control of my body position so that they can look at me more. So there's something about someone's desire through their eyes in a way that I can feel them looking at me. And there's a real energetic connection to that. And energy is one of these things that I have also found, which is not normally spoken about in normal vanilla life. Do people think about how important energy is to the acceleration of sexual tension and therefore turn on for a lot of nervous systems? I love to feel someone come towards my vulva, and before they even touch it, they're like a half an inch away, but I can feel them almost there. Or like someone breathing on the side of my neck before they kiss my neck. So there are certain things that I think externally can heighten someone's libido with teasing. So sometimes it's like having someone, you're doing dishes and they just pepper kisses up and down your neck, and then they walk out of the room. And then they come back and then they dry the dishes for you. You know what I mean? Like for a lot of women,
that's erotic, man.
Their libido will go up if you help with chores, and especially when they don't have to ask you to do them. It suddenly frees up their free time. I can't tell you, there's been a lot of research regarding that. And I think that is super relevant, that if you are raising kids, if you are busy with jobs and raising kids especially, help your partner out. They'll probably want to have sex with you more.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so true. So let us know how you are going to create more responsive desire within your relationship. We want to hear more ideas. Your ideas can bleed into other people's lives and create a whole new world. So share them in the comments, and we hope you enjoyed this episode.
See you on the flip side.
Thanks for tuning in. This episode was hosted by Tantric Sex Master Coach and Positive Psychology Facilitator Leah Piper, as well as by Chinese and Functional Medicine Doctor and Taoist Sexology Teacher Dr. Willow Brown. Don't forget, your comments, likes, subscribes, and suggestions matter. Let's realize this new world together.